it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be talking about 3 books that are essentially all the same story. So it seemed that these 3 books, I saw them being talked about on BookTube and they all used Crimson Peak either as part of their marketing blurbs or were described as being similar to Crimson Peak in premise. And I was like, well, Crimson Peak is one of my favorite movies, so why don't I try and read all of them? So that is what we are going to be doing today. The 3 books in question are Gallant by V. Schwab, The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Sterling, and Lake's Edge by Linda Clipstone. I guess I should give a summary of what Crimson Peak is to kind of anchor the narratives of these books. Crimson Peak is a 2015 gothic horror movie that's directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it's about a young woman named Edith who marries a man named Tom and then joins him at their decrepit family home of Crimson Peak. And once Edith gets there, she immediately is confronted by the presence of ghosts and tries to unravel the mystery that the siblings are keeping from her. There's so many things I love about this movie. First of all, the effects are just so good and the ghosts are really terrifying and unique. All the ghosts are played by Doug Jones in full prosthetic makeup, and he is just like such an icon and so good at his craft. Tom Hiddleston plays the male lead, and he's literally just so charming. It's completely understandable like why Edith falls for him. The costumes also are really, really iconic and beautiful. And Edith really embodies the meme of like walking in a dramatic nightgown while holding a candelabra. This movie really lends itself to the more campy, like crazy aspects of Gothic literature. I won't spoil the twist in the movie, but when me and my friend were watching it for the very first time, he like called what the twist would be as a joke. And then when it actually happens and is revealed, it gets done in the most over-the-top way possible. We were like howling at the TV with laughter. So I'm going to read these over the course of the next few weeks. And with that intro out of the way, let's get into the video. So the first book we are going to be talking about is Lake's Edge by Linda Clipstone. A one-sentence summary for this book. The main character, Valletta, and her brother, Ariane, are taken in by this lord named Rowan to come live at his estate of Lake's Edge. And he does this because Ariane has these dark magical powers, and only he will be able to heal this corruption that is spreading across the entire estate, and eventually the entire country. For the first 100 pages, I was like, I don't really like this. And if the rest of the story had been like those first 100 pages, this probably would have been like a 2.5 at best. But once they get to the estate and Violetta stops being so annoying, and her and Rowan are on more equal grounds in their relationship, it gets really good. I was at page maybe like 230 and I was like, is this a 5-star read? I also like this book is subtly queer. Violetta has been confirmed demi by the author, Rowan is probably bi, and Ariane is either gay or bi. I saw someone say that this book has Reylo energy, and I feel like we as a society need to stop acting like Kylo Ren invented this like mysterious, tall, dark, and brooding with a tortured past archetype, because he totally didn't. And to be honest, I would make a case for the characters that Tom Hiddleston plays. Both Loki and also Tom from Crimson Peak are earlier versions of this archetype, and Rowan is really like all of them combined. Other thing is that I wanted to compare this a little bit to The Shadows Between Us, because that also has the same type of like, my whole family is dead, I'm a dark and brooding bad boy in a position of power in the love interest of Callias. And I feel like I like Rowan way more than Callias because he actually acts like a real person. Callias was just like too flawless and very like mighty or holier than thou, and he never really gets developed over the course of the story. Rowan, he definitely starts out like that, but soon you realize it's all a facade, and he like has a lot of depth in him. He's really emotionally tormented, and honestly for a very good reason. And when he lets his walls down, him and Violetta are really cute together. This book definitely has Crimson Peak energy, but this book series is going to be a duology, and I think in the second book more so than this one, there's also a lot of Hades and Persephone vibes going on. And that's mostly with the relationship between Violetta and the devil figure in this world, Lord Under. Because there's a scene of Violetta summoning Lord Under using pomegranates, which both has like a Hades and Persephone's connection, but also like an Eve and the snake type of relationship connection. And honestly, when I realized there was going to be a love triangle between like a Kylo Ren-esque character and a literal god of darkness, I was like, it's kind of a flex. And honestly, really, like, go get it, girl. I'm so here for it. I feel like overall this book is kind of like a guilty pleasure. I don't think it's for everyone. I do think this book has really good atmosphere, though. I think if there is an audiobook, I would definitely check it out, because I think the story would really lend itself well to reading it very thoroughly and with, like, a lot of time spent absorbing all of the creepy atmosphere. And I'm very much awaiting the sequel that is going to be coming out in the fall time, and I definitely will pick it up as soon as it's released. The second book we are going to be talking about today is Gallant by V. Schwab. The one-sentence summary for this is it is about an orphan named Olivia Pryor. She gets a letter from her uncle that she never knew requesting that she come to the family home of Gallant. However, the only thing that Olivia has from her family is her mother's old journal, which specifically says in there for her to never ever go to Gallant. Olivia does go because she's longing to have like a proper family and a place she can call home. But once she gets there, she realizes that there's something sinister lurking there and that there might be something in the shadows that wants her even more than her old family does. I will say overall this book is just really boring. I feel like I was reading the same thing over and over and then suddenly 200 pages had passed. Another thing is that none of the characters are very likable or enjoyable to follow. It has one of my most hated tropes in it anywhere, which is like a lack of communication or refusal of information. And I want to say that while Olivia is mute, she can still communicate either by writing or with sign language. It's just that she's not really getting any usable answers from the people around her. And you would think if they want to protect her, the servants would like give her the full story, but they just don't. They really try to shelter her from the evil that she very easily can stumble into and does stumble into over the course of the story. And maybe she isn't very like forthcoming with them either about her feelings, but that might be kind of like a character trait, trying to show that in the orphanage it really beat her down and made her very untrusting. But I think with character development and plot development, it would have worked if like the last third was like a larger section of the book, to the point where Olivia and her cousin Matthew are working with each other and trusting each other a lot earlier on. I've always heard that V. Schwab's writing was really standout, but this really felt very basic to me. One thing I noticed is that like whenever a new occurrence would happen, there would be a line put in that's like, Olivia remembered when something similar happened in the orphanage, but kind of just like cuts out any tension in the scene because we have to go through like 3 paragraphs of a flashback before we get to the actual action at hand. One part that I did really like, and I was like, oh, this might be like the saving grace of the book, is the origins of Olivia's father. It was just so interesting and made a lot of sense to me. I really like it because we don't often see the aftermath of a storyline of a girl who falls in love with a monster. It gave a lot of plot relevance to Olivia and helped round out her character really well. Overall, this book was very like take it or leave it for me. There definitely are a lot of Crimson Peak-esque aspects to it, but I think overall this book just like wasn't really what I wanted or had hoped for. And this book does make me a little bit hesitant about V. Schwab's writing. Maybe this is kind of just like an off book because it seems like there are some people that find this book to be a little bit of a letdown compared to her other ones. So maybe if she releases something else in the future, I'll give it a chance. I'm not going to completely write her off just yet from one book. The last book we are going to be talking about today is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Sterling. For the one-sentence summary of this book, it is about Jane, who wants to have a marriage of convenience to this doctor, Augustine Lawrence, and he agrees on the condition that she never ever spend the night over at his family home of Lindred Hall. But of course, when a storm forces her to sleep over, she realizes that it is haunted as fuck, and that her husband has been keeping a lot of other secrets from her. Getting out to the nitty-gritty question of did I like this book, I felt really like underwhelmed from it, most of all. I feel like the second section when the magic starts happening, I feel like I didn't fully understand it, and the climax was so like confusing. It gave me like whiplash because I didn't really see it coming at all. I think this is one of those books where since I was so confused, I was Googling Death of Jane Lawrence Ending Explained Reddit, and looking at reviews, it just made me more aware of a lot of the faults of this book that I don't know if I would have noticed otherwise. Ignoring all of that outside critique, I think the thing I took away that frustrated me the most was that the second half really didn't benefit the main character's relationship development at all. In the first half of the book, there was like Jane and Augustine like working together and then starting to have feelings for each other. And then when Jane realizes Augustine has lied to her, they have like a big fight about like each other's values and the other person's flaws. But it really didn't feel like they had a deserved like coming together at the end where they worked through things. One of my favorite booktubers, Riley Marie, said that she really liked this book, but she also mentioned that she is apparently in the minority and there's a lot of people that don't really like this book. She also mentioned that a lot of people were not aware that there was going to be magic featured so heavily in the story. I'm using her as a source because I haven't seen a lot of other people discussing this book, and I just wanted to give you kind of like an overall view of maybe what BookTube's opinion on this book might be. I think this book might be kind of polarizing. It seems like if you like speculative horror, or if you like this author's other book, then you probably will enjoy this, but it's definitely not a straightforward gothic tale. Okay, with that out of the way, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things I noticed in terms of like overall similarities of these books with Crimson Peak. The first one is the importance of setting. The decrepit manor with the secrets hidden in the hallowed halls is a staple in the Gothic genre, and I think in all of these books there is that trope of the heroine holding a candelabra, walking around at night, jumping at shadows, and kind of like having the state of the house invade her psyche, making her either see things that aren't there or see something that she shouldn't. Along with the setting, there's a lot of the past family trauma kind of being reflected in the physical state of the house. In all these stories, there's a death that has taken place in the house that kind of leaves behind an actual ghost or kind of just like residual emotional trauma. And the last part of the setting is what I would like to call the creep factor. The setting often has something like very wrong with it. In Crimson Peak, it's because the ground looks like it's been soaked in blood because of the color of the earth. In Lake's Edge, there's the blighted lake. In Gallant, there's the crumbling wall with the door to the other world. And in Death of Jane Lawrence, there's the locked basement crypt. In most of these books, I would say there's also the male lead with a dark history that he's hiding from the female lead. I think probably of all of them, Augustine from The Death of Jane Lawrence is the closest to Tom from Crimson Peak. He has the same like perfectionist drive and work ethic, and also like a bonus dead wife that he may or may not have killed. And of course in Gallant there is the warning from the dead mother, which is exactly the same thing that happens to Edith in Crimson Peak. Overall, this experience was somewhat enlightening. I think for me, the thing that was missing from all of these stories was kind of like a campy, fun vibe. I don't think any of these books had the kind of like quirky, tongue-in-cheek vibe that Crimson Peak has. I want to say the Lake's Edge has the most fun in it, both in like genuinely happy moments, but also in kind of like the playfulness of the story. I feel like all of these books play their plot lines so like straight and humorless, which I don't really think Crimson Peak does. I think there's a lot more layers there. I feel like overall this has really taught me that I don't really like gothic stories that are so humorless. The gothic genre obviously has a lot of like variations in it, but I definitely prefer it when it gets to the more like outrageous campy aspects over like being incredibly like focused on being scary. So that is it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like or subscribing to the channel if you aren't already. As always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!